Sarah Collins. Thank you for your interest in my new book, Raising the Standards Through Chapter Books, The CIA Approach. This book is really personal to me as it culminates years of organic research in my own classrooms, grades 3 through 5. Please join with me as I introduce the approach, beginning with the foundational research that makes it so effective for all readers, even those who are struggling. Consider how the authentic habits embedded in this approach foster a lifelong love of reading. The Common Core state standards have now been adopted by 44 states, communicating the need for college and career readiness. Out of these state standards, we recognize one key requirement. All students must be able to comprehend texts of increasing complexity as they progress through school, if they are to be college and career ready. Tim Shanahan tells us in his online article, "To succeed, we need to strive to identify what makes a book too hard and then provide scaffolding and motivation that would sustain students' efforts to read challenging text." So what makes a book too hard? The research tells us that text complexity is defined by much more than the vocabulary level of the text. In fact, text complexity is comprised of 3 parts: the quantitative level, usually generated by a computer, which is defined by vocabulary and sentence length; the qualitative level, which is defined by the complexity of the text structure, language, and themes within the text; and finally, the task level, which includes what readers are being asked to do in order to understand the text. This is defined in part by the actual length of the text. If our students must be able to comprehend texts of increasing complexity to be college and career ready, then the question becomes, how do we close the gap between reader and text? In other words, how do we help struggling and reluctant readers access these challenging texts? What follows are key findings outlined in the 2002 RAND report. First, to close the gap between reader and text, teachers can provide the support of the gradual release model. Backed by significant research, this model gradually shifts the weight of the task from the teacher to the student. First, the teacher provides explicit modeling. Next, teacher and student share the work in guided practice. After that, students practice together in collaboration, and finally, they are released to successfully implement on their own, independently. The gradual release model builds the case for reading aloud to students for the purpose of relieving the cognitive weight of the text. When readers do not have to focus on decoding and fluency, they are able to engage in the thinking work demanded of them by complex text. It is true, listening comprehension sets the upper limits for reading comprehension, and therefore, read aloud should be part of our literacy programs through age 13. In addition, teachers can close the gap between reader and text by building students' background knowledge. Not just content-focused, background knowledge includes explicitly teaching the predictable elements of genre, bringing in additional text and media support for a given topic, explicitly teaching key repeated vocabulary from the text, and broadening student experiences with text, helping them make connections across those texts. This work can be crafted and supported through purposeful vertical alignment across grade levels. Finally, the RAND report of 2002 calls for explicitly teaching students a plan of action for reading text. This is where the CIA acronym becomes important. It clearly outlines a plan for reading text of any length and qualitative level. Collect critical information from the text. Interpret the text. Apply to your life. Before reading, readers create their action plan by dividing the text into 4 relatively equal parts. Colored sticky notes mark these important pages. Readers know ahead of time how the thinking work will shift as they move through each of these quadrants. The thinking work of CIA will gradually carry them up Bloom's taxonomy within a single text. In Quadrant 1, readers focus on collecting critical information in their readers' notebooks. They will be focused on gathering information about the character, the setting, and the plot, including the problems and important events. In Quadrant 1, readers read slowly and stop often to write information down. They do this for the purpose of monitoring comprehension and getting the story in their head. This mimics the work of even expert readers who often read slowly and reread in the early chapters of a book, especially when the book is by a new author or about an unfamiliar topic. At the end of Quadrant 1, readers will stop to check comprehension by writing a retell summary. This is the first informal writing piece readers will compose in the reader's notebook. As readers move into Quadrant 2, they read for the purpose of interpreting the text. Now they narrow their focus to the element that is most critical to this particular genre. They notice patterns in key repeated words and consider how those patterns intentionally point the reader to the theme. Now, the reading pace begins to increase as readers stop to write less often. At the end of Quadrant 2, readers brainstorm themes and choose one theme to focus on as they move into Quadrant 3. While the purpose of Quadrant 3 is still interpretation, readers now narrow their focus even more by gathering evidence to support one prominent theme. Here, readers will also recognize the author's use of foreshadowing. In Quadrant 3, the author prepares the reader for the most important event in the book, the turning point. The turning point is the place in the story where the plot makes a dramatic change. The turning point reveals the author's message. At the end of Quadrant 3, readers will add the last piece of evidence in support of the theme. Then, they will check their understanding through writing. The last quadrant of the text is where the reader will evaluate the author's message by determining whether they agree or disagree with the author based on the evidence collected. At this point, readers will consider how their own beliefs might impact their life and their actions. The speed of this last quadrant should mimic the pace set by real-life readers. It is here in this last quadrant where readers desire to read to the end without interruption. This is the intrinsic reward readers receive at the end. Letting our students feel this momentum will foster lifelong reading. Upon completing the book, readers participate in one final check stop, their reflection writing piece. Here, readers engage in the work of synthesis as they summarize the entire text briefly. Readers go on to share and support the author's message with evidence drawn from the text and share their own beliefs. This application solidifies the purpose of reading, to be affected by what we read. Thank you for taking the time to hear about this powerful approach and the research that supports it. I hope you will be inspired to use this approach in your own classroom and thereby raise the standards for your students. In addition, I have written units of study for the instructional Read Aloud that support listening comprehension, language, writing, speaking, and listening standards. They offer a vertical alignment of genre and social studies topics across grade levels. These units are currently being published for 4th and 5th grade. Plans to publish units for grades 1, 2, 3, and 6 by 2013 are also being made.